el perro, otro perro, un esquilo o un pato. ¿Qué quieren?
Pato.
Un pato, ok. Dame el perro para
Es
acá.
mi
Guárdalo. No, son míos. Bien, entonces van a pararse y van a jugar el perro para allá y para acá, el pato para allá y para acá. Y
El
cuando
perro es mi corazón, el gato no es bueno. Cilantro es cantante, cilantro es muy famoso, cilantro es el hombre con el queso de...
Ok. Pase para ella, por favor. Porque ella todavía no está hablando español. Entonces, una pregunta. ¿Qué te gusta hacer en el fin de semana?
En el fin de semana a mí me gusta leer mis libros.
Muy bien. Ok, continuamos.
El diablo.
¿Y cómo eres?
Alta.
Alta.
Soy vieja, más o menos, y soy profesora, pero eso no es
Profesora,
no me
ojos
gusta.
azules.
No, son verdes. De verdad.
Verdes, guapa, rubia o morena.
Más o menos.
Ok.
Ya empezamos.
Entonces, ok.
El perro es mi corazón, el gato.
Sara, ¿cómo es tu familia?
Mi familia es bastante pequeña. Ellos viven en Maryland.
¿Cuántas personas son?
4.
4 personas. ¿Quién son?
Tengo mi padre, mi madre y mi hermana menor.
Muy bien. ¿Y cómo se llama tu hermana menor?
Se llama Samantha.
Muy bien.
El gato no es bueno, cilantro es cantante, cilantro es muy famoso, cilantro es el hombre con el queso del diablo.
Julie, ¿qué te gusta hacer cuando te vas de vacaciones?
Me gusta ir a la playa.
Muy bien. ¿Qué haces en la playa?
Bebemos y comemos.
¿Y qué más?
Y descansamos.
Al sol.
Sí, me
Tomamos
gusta el
sol, ¿verdad?
Sí.
¿Y caminas en la playa?
Sí, a veces nado.
Te gusta nadar en la playa. Y a veces hace nada.
Exacto.
Nado y hace nada. Okay, so you get the idea, you get their blood going, so you can imagine 4 tables packed, and then I add an extra. This little ball goes between tables. So they are now including one more challenge and one more item that they need to pay attention to, activating schemata, getting their blood circulating and them participating. And today I was delivering their compositions, and I did the game before I gave the composition. Because I didn't want anybody depressed thinking about how bad they did or, oh, great. So I was strategic in that way. Muy bien. Ok. Siéntense, por favor. Vamos a pasar a nuestro libro que hicimos en este trabajo. We had, they were responding to an ed that was in the personals. Something funny, okay? It's in the page prior. And they were supposed to fill this out and bring it in as part of their homework. So, was their worksheet. Hicieron el ejercicio, mire, ahí está. Están describiendo a sí mismos cómo eres, qué te gusta hacer, qué te gusta hacer en los fines de semana. Notice how the warm-up is tied in to what's coming next to get their schemata active. Y entonces, ahora vamos a ver una descripción como ejemplo de un otro anuncio de periódico. Entonces, puede leer esta descripción. So I'll translate it for our guest who doesn't speak Spanish. Hi, darling. I am a young 25-year-old that loves older men, 85 or older, which are already mature and know how to treat a lady. I would like to know you, sweet papa, sweet honey, sweet daddy. I want to travel with you. Everything 5 stars, of course. If you are in bad health, you must answer this ad. I could be a great nurse. I like to have fun, and if you have a wheelchair, I can convert it in a game. It could become a game, a toy. Only answer if you have the flexibility of adding me to your will. The sweet Chana. Okay, so the instruction is for them to create a fictitious name, age, description, physical description, description of the personality, and activities they like to do. So we're gonna primero vamos en la parte de atrás vamos llenar al escribir unas características físicas y características de personalidad. Algunas características, extra pen. Okay. Entonces, physical characteristics and characteristics of your personality. They are filling this out. They are borrowing from their exercise that they did. They have the words near them. So you're making the connections throughout the whole thing. And the activities, las actividades que le gusta hacer. Escriba 2 que son verdaderas y una que sea una mentira. Y vamos a adivinar.
Bowling.
¿Es el boliche? No.
Boliche. Boliche.
¿En
Boliche.
español?
Yeah.
En español creo que es boliche.
Boliche. For bowling.
We'll take made up words too. Ok, a ver, Rachel, comparta con nosotros unas características físicas.
Soy baja, morena, con los ojos azules.
Muy bien. ¿Y unas características de personalidad, Julie?
Soy rebelde.
Rebelde.
Sí.
¿Qué más?
Divertida.
Divertida. Sí, es verdad. ¿Qué más?
Sí. Inteligente.
Inteligentísima.
Yes.
Muy bien. So we get it. You know, you think of like 55 students, 26 students going in here. It takes a while to get this through. They're moving through, and the idea is to get it really paced, fast, so that they can go from one activity to another in a really good speed. So, ahora, actividades que le gusta hacer. Sara, ¿qué le gusta hacer? 3 actividades. Y nosotros vamos a adivinar cuál es la mentira.
Okay. Pues a mí me gusta mucho correr medio maratones y me encanta caminar con mis perros y viajar mucho a Canadá.
Bueno, ¿qué creen?
No le gusta viajar a Canadá.
Hace demasiado frío.
¿Verdad?
¡Acertamos! Muy bien. A ver,
sola.
Rachel, cuéntanos.
Igual.
A mí me gusta cocinar, a mí me gusta pintar la casa y montar caballos.
¿Qué creen? Todas son posibles.
Pintar la casa.
Sí, no me gusta.
Muy bien. ¿Y tú, Julie?
Me gusta caminar con mi perro, me gusta jugar videojuegos y me gusta mirar películas.
Videojuegos.
Odio videojuegos.
Y yo. A ver. Me gusta hacer scuba diving. ¿Cómo se llama? Buzón, ¿no?
Buceo.
Buceo. Me gusta hacer buceo. Me gusta correr maratones y me gusta cocinar. ¿Qué creen?
No te gusta correr maratonas.
Es verdad. Adivinaste. Muy bien. O sea, esta es una actividad que trae mucha risa, mucha participación. Ellos se empiezan a integrar en grupos. Entonces, siempre están ellos en las mismas mesas, ¿no? They have a tendency to get together in the same tables all the time. So I have a little trick that I do, which I count them off, right? We're not going to have all of these people here to create 7 groups. We're going to create, but what I do is I say, okay, starting with 200.
201,
220, okay, 220.
222.
21.
22.
23.
223.
Sorry about the 200.
223.
223.
224.
225.
So, vamos contando en la clase. En la otra clase uso 300. Y ahí los tengo ya marcados en sus huddleboards. Ya están todos enumerados. Porque ellos llegan y ya están mirando qué tengo. A veces ya tengo la página, ellos ya saben lo que van a mirar. Y cuando ven los números ya están con su esquema a punto de empezar. Ya saben qué números van a tener. Y voy hasta 1000, 900, 800 cada vez. Cambio, 20, 30, están siempre usando números en las
It's a
clases.
good idea though to use different ones other than just
Sí.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Siempre estamos usando. Y ellos los fuerza a repetirlos porque yo no tengo que decirlo. Ellos ya hacen solos porque están acostumbrados. Entonces es bueno tener unas actividades, por ejemplo, el huddleboard. Ellos ya saben que van a trabajar en el huddleboard cuando vienen y ven los números en el huddleboard. Ya saben, ya están preparados, ya tienen esta rutina con los huddleboards que les encanta. Ok, entonces, vamos a usar un huddleboard. Ustedes, todas, hay una manera de usar este huddleboard aquí, que es muy práctica, porque ellos son un poquito altos. Pero yo tengo un truque muy bueno que algunos se pueden usar, pero siempre paran en las sillas. Uno segura el board y aquí estamos. ¿Okay? Ustedes van a crear un anuncio, su propio anuncio, pero que sea una persona muy cómica, ¿ok? Vamos a ver una persona muy cómica. A ver dónde está. Aquí. Y vamos a mirar qué queremos en este anuncio. Queremos usar adjetivos que describen características físicas, describir cómo es la personalidad, describir actividades que le gusta hacer y sean cómicos y creativos. Entonces tenemos el ejemplo de esta dulce chana. La dulce chana. Entonces, a ver, vengan para acá y empiecen a crear unas ideas. You guys can go into English if you want. So you're creating a funny ad for the newspaper that is similar to the sweet chana here. Together. Come on, funny.
Buenas. Buena.
Is it a letter or just a description?
It's an ad. You guys
Okay.
are going to create an ad.
Buena.
Buena, buena.
Buenas. Buena.
It's
¿Qué
an
tal?
ad.
No.
What's
¿Qué
the
más?
name?
Buena.
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 Bueno, ¿qué más? ¿Qué más vas a decir?
Bueno, ayúdame.
Vamos, vete.
¿Qué voy a
ayuda.
decir porque soy tan buena?
Ajá. Wait, quiero decir que
Porque yo soy tan buena.
quiero una persona.
Are we writing in response to someone's ad, or are we
No,
creating
you're
an ad like
creating
that?
a personality
Quiero una persona
that goes.
tan buena
Como yo.
como yo. ¿Qué?
There's another model that might help you too. Tengo 15 años y deseo conocer una chica de 75 años que le gusta comer huevos de tortuga para viajar juntos a México este invierno. Deseo que la chica pague todos los gastos porque no tengo dinero. Soy divertido y me gusta comer mucho. Me gusta mirar películas todo el día y la noche también.
¿Qué? Bueno, ¿qué más?
A ver.
Quiero una persona buena, tan buena como yo. Que sea alto. ¿Qué?
Tenga 3 piernas
Okay.
y no tiene dientes. Sin dientes. That actually came up in one of the ads in class. And somebody says, I have an extra pair of teeth.
A lend.
¿Qué más? Quiero bucear. What is it? Bucear. Pero no con los tiburones.
Y por eso necesito 3 piernas.
Ajá. Y por eso necesita 3 piernas.
¿Qué más?
¿Qué más?
What are we going to say about this person? I guess you have to define what means buena. Huh?
Es importante que tengas dinero porque
Yo no tengo.
a mí me gusta gastarlo.
Yeah.
Oh, bien. Sí, esto está bien.
Okay, so you assume they're all standing around and they're giving one person who's writing.
They're working together. They huddle together around the huddleboards. They disperse around the room. Usually it turns out 7 per board.
In your class, because you have a big class, don't you?
And so they start doing this, everybody participates, they call me over all the time, and usually what happens is they get involved in the creativity process, right? Because they start getting really excited. The more they say, and I come over and I throw in some really spicy little things, like, ride on the wheelchair, something like that. Ask for somebody that, loves dogs and dresses in a fur coat all the time, or how about a plastic doll, something a little risky, they get really excited about the risky ideas. So I kind of go around, salt and peppering some of these ideas to them. And so,
Do you ever get some who don't participate
never,
very much?
not yet. I haven't seen it yet, because what happens is when they start with the game gets them going. So they start feeling comfortable with each other. They know their little routines, and they know they're going to present. So once I started very simple, small presentations where they get to present always. That is invariable in the class is they must present what they produced. So they get to read it, and they get to sometimes do little skits in their presentation. They create a dialogue, and they'll go and do the little skit in front of the room, and they use the huddleboard as the script. They can look over to the script so they can construct their characters, right? So there's a lot of looking at the board and interacting with the public, right? Getting over the fear of using Spanish. So
what happens since they're in groups of 7 and you ask them to present what they've done, how do they divide up the work on
I'm
that?
sorry, it's 7 groups of 3 or 4.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
the count is 7 groups.
So
Groups
if there's 3 or 4, then how do you control one person always talking and other people sitting quiet and
And
one
Or
talking?
one person always writing and the other one's not.
Yeah, that's the facilitator's job, the teacher's job, where you come in and you ask questions to that person that you know is a little bit quiet. So what do you got to contribute? And
Yeah, okay.
Chelsea, did you say something? And
Okay, good.
what
Mhm.
is it your turn to contribute some sentences to this, and how you're going to say this? So I think that the idea that the teacher is constantly monitoring the group, and she actually belongs to every group. She belongs to every group. She goes in and she belongs to every group, because remember, this is language acquisition. They're just launching their confidence. So you want to be there as the leader of each group to build their confidence. So there's other ways that I build their confidence is also where they listen and then they write in the huddleboard. I call it fishing. We're going fishing. What words can you fish? So the different groups will fish, and when I stop the tape, we'll see which group got the most. So it becomes a little more competitive. They're always like really, everybody's throwing words. Throw that one, además. So, and if they have transitional words, they get even more points. Además, que bien, entonces. So if they catch those, that counts as 2. So, there's different things that can be done to encourage them to go a little further, one more degree of challenge for their capacity. Once all of the boards are filled, there's usually 7 boards with 7 different ads. So then each person, they go back to their seats and they get to choose which ad they're going to reply to. So then they're going to compose in class a response to that ad. So it encourages them to interact with the material they created and with each other's materials. So, of course, by this point, everybody has laughed a lot. They laugh a lot because they say such silly things, like a dog with blue hair. I want a dog with blue hair. I love dogs, and I hope you'll be open to marriage. The dog, really, there's like all kinds of really crazy things that they come up with, and how I keep everything very respectful is participating in the group, checking in. One phenomenon that happens is that they want to know many words that is not in the book and many words that are strange. They want to know. Mm-hmm. So we keep a computer going for word reference, or I run over here and I check words, right? I steer them away from Google. So they will go in, sometimes they go in themselves and look for the words, and but you can see that that's a phenomenon that comes very strongly. They want to know. And you can do this activity with every level, because a more advanced level can do just as much challenged tasks. Mm-hmm. And the important thing is that they are using their creativity to connect with each other and then producing something that can then be shared and responded to. So I am very active in making them laugh about what's being written, and I laugh a lot, and I keep them engaged with the tools that they have in the room, because they are tired of the pantalla, of the, that's an old thing. This, although it's very basic, right, writing, but it's the whole idea of the boards and it's like a different writing medium that they are using, and they write it really well. They write it in color. They want to use different colors to express. That's why I keep 2 bags, because each member of the group gets to write in their color. The contributions are color coded. So there are 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 colors on the board, and you get to see who contributed, because you can see the variety of colors that come up. So there's lots of little ways that you can implement their participation. And what becomes really fun is when they respond to the material. Now that we are in these interviews, the assignment at home is create questions. Then as a group, when they get together in class, because there is 3 or 4 brains interacting, I want more complex questions, not the questions that came from home. How can you as a group get together and create some complexity to these questions? Something really specific that you do. What do you like to do in the weekends when you have gotten an A+, right? So that more complexity, because the celebration is going to be bigger, or the idea of celebrating is going to be the guiding force of that activity. Or what do you like to do when your parents are visiting town? What would you like to do if your boyfriend is taking you out for a show? Where would you like to go eat? What kind of dinner do you want? And what kind of party would you like to put together this weekend? So they can get very elaborate with the questions that, if you were going to have a party, how would you like to do it? So then they are using different verb tenses that they are now being exposed to. That's not just present and past. They are now coming into I would like, me gustaría, and using verbs like oír y hacer, and more irregulars. This is the moment we are introducing. And the great thing about the hurdle boards, when you are introducing challenging sentence structures, like using the irregular verbs. So we have the book open all the time. I use the book all the time. And if they don't have a book, they sit next to somebody, and I project it on the board. So they are always working with their primary text. That's what I call the primary text, always going to reference it. So I have them get together and write on the boards sentences with the challenging forms of the irregular verbs in different colors, because it helps their memory too. And so they are using that kind of activity to do something challenging, and yet they're helping each other. They're not alone in there. And they are calling me over all the time, because they also gotten used to relying on the coach, and I set their relationship early on. So really present, and I think that's the key with the hurdle boards, because there's some challenges that are presented to them for them to launch themselves a little, that the facilitator is present, helping them, and that they never feel like they're going to make a fool of themselves in front of the room when the presentation time comes. So, and I think that the presentation piece, where they come and they present the board, and that's why the encouragement of the board being well written, clear writing, so that they can present well. So that's yet another skill, that they are paying attention at how they present themselves. They all want to show up really funny. So the funnier the better, and that's the core. This kind of humor with the team-based activities, with the hurdle boards, because it's a visual production, and then the presentation has gotten them very active in their language usage, that combination. And their listening skills also has improved because I put them on the huddles, on the huddle boards to fish. So they get to show off how much they are perceiving now from the tons of verbal activities that's in this book. And this is particularly helpful for you, Sarah, because there's a ton in here and I don't like to skip them.
It's
Right.
difficult to decide which ones you want to do in such a short amount of time.
Right? So I use the huddle board because then they are listening, they are writing, they are showing off to each other, they are participating, and we already know that some team members are very strong in this activity of listening, and I encourage them to listen to it at home, both with the eyes open and the eyes closed, and come prepared. So some of them are like acing, they ace everything, and then counting them off in different groups allows for one strong person to be in a group that may not have as strong people. So, and if I see two strong people in a group, I'll go and I move them around to create more confidence in the other members, right? And I say to that person, help him out, make sure that he's really paying attention to that. So I kind of set them up with little mentoring of one another, right? And it's hard to decide. And how do you decide?
Personally, how I decide?
Yeah.
Oh man. I go based on which activities I think will engage them the most. You know, if it's a quick, like fill in the blank activity, to me that's not really engaging anymore. So a lot of times we do that. I've incorporated the animal pass and the question answer. So they're on their feet, they're thinking constantly, well in advance.
Right.
So it still takes them some time to produce something, but it's still worth the wait, I think.
Yeah, and one thing is that the activities in the book, they're so simple now for them because they are really getting this game, right? So I've noticed that when I have activities like this, that sometimes I even pass them around and I tell them, don't put a name on it. And I take them, I shuffle them, and I distribute and have them read aloud the description of the person, and then I throw, who is this person? So they get to guess who that person is, right? And sometimes they live little breadcrumbs to each other, right? So I am the tallest person in this room. You know, so la persona más alta de esta clase. So they are already learning too how to leave little threads for one another to facilitate and have the game be really fun. I think that it's hard to figure out games. But I think that guessing games are great for me at this level. And also, as much as that I don't want to encourage competition, they love competition. We are culturated in competition. So the fishing for sounds, that to me has been the best game. And you can play every class, right? Because that is one of our goals, to really train their listening skills, because that's where they feel so challenged in language acquisition, because it's when they can say things, but to respond to what people are saying is that they feel the challenge, because they don't understand the speed. And when I present sentence, ¿qué vas a hacer en el fin de semana? ¿Qué vas a hacer en el fin de semana? ¿Qué vas a hacer en el fin de semana? So I switch my mode so that I train their ear to somebody who's speaking really fast. That's another game that we play, because I can go through really quick questions on the warm-up and make them, because they go, right? And then the game becomes more exciting because they don't want to catch that dog, right? And they are very nervous around it. And that is working to wake them up, get their blood circulating, bringing their attention. They are thinking, what is the question going to be? How fast is she going to speak it? So sometimes I do a really difficult question, very slow, and a real easy question, really fast, to throw off their hearing into another modality. They love those challenges. So, any questions?
What would you say would be the thing that you found in taking advantage of this space in comparison to the classroom space, the most useful aspect of having this space? or the most distinct aspect of this environment?
One thing that I give as a direction a lot with them when they conduct interactions with each other, especially the interviewing, answering questions, and we started simple and now we're getting more complex, is that they must look at each other's eyes. Because I tell them that in real life, when we talk to people, we don't talk to people like this, we don't talk to people like this, we talk to people looking in their eyes. That's part of memory and interaction between human beings. So basically, even if they have to hold their paper, they need to look at each other's eyes. And I find that the tables, especially in Lab 1, is wonderful. I like this lab a lot because there's no computers. And that, you know, if there's computers in there, I don't feel like I can tell them, don't turn them on. They come in, some of them turn them on. Because I stick to the book a lot, they know don't even bother. But some people bought books online. But then I stay real close to that activity. So let's look in this book here, because they're supposed to be in that computer with my Spanish lab book, right? They can't be anywhere else. Because if they're not listening to me, and I pretty much demand that if I'm going to have 50 minutes with them, that when I talk, you listen, and when it's your time to talk, and I'd say to them, I want to speak for 10 minutes today, giving you my input. And then the other 35, 45, 40 minutes is your talking. You're going to talk, but I'll tell you when. So that way, the 50 minutes is super productive, right? Because they can't, and I explain to them that, number one, it's very important to do the assignments before you come to class, because research shows UCLA research shows that learning happens in three stages: the pre-activity, the event of class, and the post-activity. So the pre-activity gives you 25% of learning. The classroom only gives you 30%. And 45% comes from the post-activity, what you're going to do afterwards. So I always make sure they have one assignment, and there's my Spanish lab that they're supposed to do before each class, so that's guaranteeing me my pre and post, because then when you get that movement going, the pre and post is together. So I tell them, this is 30%, and if you're not talking in my class, you're going to get probably 10. And it's my job as the facilitator of this course to make sure you are with me 30% here, listening to me. You can't do side talking unless, of course, I liberate. Then I liberate. Talk. I let them talk. I let them go in English for no more than 2 or 3 minutes. And then I start clapping. Stay in Spanish, but I let them go into the first, storm together. They storm, right? Because that's how groups are when they form. They first storm, norm, and perform. That's how groups move. So I let them storm in English because they're enjoying that time together. And then when I norm, okay, Spanish only, do not go into English, and I clap loudly, and they know I'm listening, and I go over, and I touch them a lot. Okay, Spanish now, with taps to anchor them into paying attention here, or I'm here, I'm in charge. And then I let them start going into that mode of performing. And then they perform all the way. They will produce and they will present. That's how I oversee the sequence. And because I try to not speak too much or in spurts, it's true when I tell them, you have most of the talking time. So when I talk, give me my 10 minutes and listen to me. Don't be into sidebars. So they are wonderful because I have them really good training, just like the doggies. It's like.
So Celina, there aren't many classrooms on campus that have huddleboards. So what are alternatives? Can people just be sitting around writing on a piece of paper and working with different colored pens and pencils? There have to be alternatives because we can't all cram into this room, all of us who are teaching languages here at UNM. So is one of the advantages to these the fact that it's up on the wall? Is that, it would seem like it would be. I'm just trying to think of what one could do, because I put things up on the walls before. I had people go and stand in front of them and talk and whatever. But I'm just wondering about the actual placement and how we could try to imitate that.
One of the, when I used to teach on the other rooms, especially 241, which is a very dark room, and I had a class in there, and we hadn't begun to use this space. I used to bring color paper. So I had light pink, light green, light orange, light blue, and I distributed the groups in color-coded paper, and that helped to keep a little activity. And I asked them to bring colored pens to class. And I usually have a collection of colored pens. I am a firm believer that color coding is really helpful to the brain. So I encourage them to do, they have this ongoing activity throughout the semester to color code verbs for me. So at the end of the semester, if they have 10 sheets like this, I collect them and then I'll count them at the very end. I tell them that I'm going to be very lenient in the way that I'm going to be grading you, right? That participation grade is going to go up a little because you've done this. And I find that I asked them recently, after we did the midterm, what was when it came to verbs, what you think helped you the most? It's a leading question, I know. And they said, the verb conjugations that we have turned in every week. And the color coding. So that's where I'm getting my little grammar activities in. And it's very, I'm not taking note of it now. They know I don't take note of it. I don't chastise them for not turning it in. I don't manage them. But I remind them, there's a lot of verbs coming in. Great, you guys are going to get some extra points with participation here in this class. So I'm always giving them a little carrot, keep an eye on the prize kind of conversation, and they respond to that, And like today I taught the verb ir to substitute voy, vas, vamos for the future, right? And I said, I made a big deal. Guess what? You do not need to learn to conjugate the future tense. Oh, really? Yeah, isn't that fantastic? I change my voice, I make a big deal, and I put the voy, vamos, and look how easy it is. You just use the indicative. Isn't it great? Okay, let's give me an example. And I let them say, and they go up to the board too to create sentences for me with that form. The boards are so good. Or they can do it in paper, in color paper. And I used to get into my 241, which is really dark room. And I immediately put them in circles. Immediately went into circles. Because then I did the activities, they were a little different. I didn't work with the animals then. I had something to do with the fingers, 1, 2, 1, 2, and whoever got the biggest number, 1 to 5, fingers 1 to 5. When the music stopped, whoever had the many more numbers in their hand would be the person that would speak. The questions would circulate that way. And but they were already in circles. And of course, takes about 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes beforehand and 2.5 minutes after, which is big time in your class time. If you train them well, they get there and they already are fixing the classes, and you kind of get those students that are most participatory and ask them, can you get in and go ahead and set the circles? So, but the key is, again, to respect a little bit of their group time. So I lead activities where I keep them in the same groups that they naturally choose. And once a week I shift them around, to just create the variety, because I like that they are comfortable with each other, and they write about each other now in the compositions. Today they turned in compositions. I noticed that some of them were very perfect, and I talked to them about that. That, if you have a friend that helped you, it's better that you come and talk to me, because we're gonna probably increase the amount of words. You did 300, now you're gonna do 500, because you need to practice this. And it was really sweet, because about 6 of them came to talk to me after class and said, yeah, my friend did, my sister helped me, my da-da-da helped me. And I was really lenient. Okay, so let's do some extra sentences that you do it yourself. So it was like, I really got them. I really got them where I want them to be, to understand that this. And I talked about that conversation that we had about plagiarizing and turning them into the office of plagiarism, because if they're doing it in this class, they're doing it in other classes, and it's a bad habit to start, and we don't want to encourage, so I scared them a little bit. And I said, if you come to me and tell the truth, we're gonna just work with it, and you're gonna learn a lesson, and just the fact of them. So I stay really close to them, I play with them, I connect with them, I tell them funny stories in front of the room, I call one of myself, because my spelling in Spanish is so poor. I confuse double S's with the Portuguese, and they're always watching double R's, right? Because Spanish has single R's, single S's a lot. So I already have a little method where they get little points for correcting my spelling in front of the room.
It's good.
Right? So they are, oh, Professora, there's that missing a little R in there. There's not that I. R's, and S's that they watch out for. So they're my partners. Mm-hmm. And that is another thing. When I ask them to get up and go do an activity, they're with me. They're my partners. They will do everything I ask them to do. So it's a good training for them. And also the playing. The playing makes them think that I'm a playmate, in a way. Sets me up as a playmate. And when I get firm and direct and demanding with them, then they see me, the teacher, so they get to see me with different hats during the classroom time, and that builds the rapport that, gets them to trust me. And right around this time is when I start asking, so who is it that's going to go to 102? Who's thinking about declaring a minor in Spanish? I see the little hands going up. And then I use that information later to talk about, okay, Allison, remember, you're going to be taking 102. You're going to have to correct that habit of not conjugating verbs appropriately. You can't get to 102 with this poor habit of, giving me first person for third person. They're going to look at me funny. What did Celina do in this class? She didn't teach them how to use the correct verb time. Come on, Allison. Get with it. Move on. Let's conjugate. And also point the errors of their individual errors as group errors. Mm-hmm. Everybody's erring. That I have a habit of doing that. Okay, you all have been doing this, agreement with gender is, you guys are doing a very poor job with that. I'm telling you, in the final, when this comes up, I will not forgive it. Because you've had 3 months to practice. I get like, so that the whole class start paying attention. So there's a lot of language that I use, and I think that the circle is very helpful. The way that also in a classroom like this with a little more room, the facilitator gets to move and give a dynamic thing, and when the thing of the animal is going on, I'm like shaking, clapping, really getting them going. They know, where my speed is. And I said, okay, did I have coffee this morning or not? What do you guys think? So, they get to relate to me a little bit on that. And we talk about their success all the time. We talk about their success. And I think that's a conversation that they relate to how much I care for them. So that I think in this beginning level of language acquisition, kind of holding them accountable that they're not high schoolers anymore. Because you have a lot of newbies, freshmen in here, and that I tell them, you're not working for me. You're working for yourself. You know, this is not about us supervising you. It's about you supervising yourself. Do you have a scholarship? That's my favorite conversation. How is that kind of scholarship going to be affected if you get a big old F at the end of the semester? So, and I say to them, this is the time to drop. If you doubt you can catch up and stay on the saddle, this is the time to drop. That F is not going to look good if you're carrying 18 credits and you look like your, see, MLS gives that grade. That's the great thing about my Spanish lab on this level, because they can look. So I think that also, whenever we can give that feedback of where your grade is at, I think that's really important for them to also become more participative in classes. And
Well, and take
that-
responsibility for their own learning, which is something that at the 100 level is a really important lesson. It's not a lesson that they've necessarily brought with them from high school.
Exactly.
That sense of accountability to themselves. It's their fault. They need to, kind of
I find
engage
that
with that.
this conversation of responsibility has to do with the huddle board also impacts that, because they are more exposed when they're using a writing tool like the huddle board, where everybody gets to see what their writing looks like, right? What their structure looks like, and what the work they are doing, right? When they go up and they put their sentence on, because we know it's color-coded, and they're watching each other, they're participating with each other. So they're paying more attention to themselves. I think another conversation that's really great around the huddle boards is their behavior around the huddle board.
With each other.
With each
Yeah.
other, because if they're disrupting the other.
Yeah.
So we talk about self-management,
Yeah.
and what is one of the characteristics of maturity. So I kind of watch them, and then the next class I'll bring the conversation of maturity. What do children don't do that adults do? Kids can't stop. Kids can't control themselves. I tease it out of them. So when we are around the board, let's have a more self-controlled, managed position here, so we can get to the point, stay on the focus, produce, and look good. Because if you're distracting your team is not producing, then you do that really good. And stay on the focus. Don't be going off on another tangent. Stay on focus.
I think one thing that can help with the other classrooms is you can do like little groups around the chalkboards. So I'd always flip the classroom. I'd stand by the door and put my stuff on a table, and then put all of the students up in little groups right by the
Yeah,
front big
four.
chalkboard, by the
Two boards
chalkboards.
that you can do.
So,
four
Yeah,
groups.
but it's boards, yeah.
If you have two on each wall, you can have 4 groups. They can each use an end of the chalkboard.
So the chalkboard becomes the
So the
huddleboard.
chalkboard
Yeah.
becomes the
Yeah.
huddleboard, and then they're at the front, and so it's about them.
Yeah.
It's focused.
I don't know if the lab is open to it, but we can certainly talk to Pam. They're very open to lending me things. I move the boards around. That we can borrow 2 or 3 boards to take it to a class. Get a couple students to come and meet me here, and then walk with the boards, and then come back and turn it in the front desk. Certainly with the graduate students who are TAs that can be trusted with taking materials out of here and returning them, I don't see why Pam wouldn't be open to that. So the huddle boards could be taken technically over to another
I've seen
class.
classes that, just use the big sticky paper that's like
Yeah.
for an easel and put them up on the
Yeah.
wall, because they don't have, the
Mhm.
benefit of this kind of environment, and then students stand around that kind of a,
Yeah.
and that, so that means the teacher carrying it to class, but on the other hand, it does do that public thing, and it does do, you can use colored pens or markers or whatever. I mean, I think the idea of being on display is kind of an interesting one.
Yeah.
I think it would be-
And we do that on some of your classes, where we go up and walk right on the board. a
Not
little
really,
bit.
but, yeah, not as much certainly, but, I'm not sure at that level it even matters as much. But it
Right.
certainly, I think, matters for you all, because it has an accountability issue that I think is particularly needed at the 100 and 200 level in classes. Kids are still trying to figure out what it is to be in college. And one of them is to be accountable. And one of them is to be in front of others and not be a goof off, but in front of others and be a more professional, right, in terms of being a
And how I set up that
Yeah.
conversation is, I want to build your confidence, I tell them. I want you to feel confident.
Yeah.
So that's how I bring up that conversation.
Yeah.
But what's happening is that they're visible. They're being seen.
Right, but then other people, they can compare themselves, right? Oh, wow, look at that group. They really got it together. Oh,
Right.
our group didn't have it together. What's the problem? You know,
Yes.
I mean, that sort of public behavior is very meaningful.
My
Thank you,
department
guys.
used
Go
to
ahead,
allocate-
Sarah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. So my department used to allocate funds to each teacher. So I generally spent probably 50 of the 100 whatever dollars I managed to get just for my Spanish materials on these individual whiteboards from Teachers Discovery. And they're not exactly cheap, but it might be worth something, investing.
One
in
thing
for
we could
people.
check in with the Spanish department, since we have so many sections of Spanish, is if the department is willing to buy those big pads that are stickies.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We can have it up there in the office, we can go in, take a few each time. I don't know if that is a budget for that, but,
Yeah, I kind of wish I brought them.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, because in some ways you're always starting all over again every time you go somewhere, and if you collect good ideas, you oftentimes still need the resources to develop those good ideas. Yeah.
exactly.
That was really good, Celina. Thank you.
Gracias,
Celina.
amigas.
That was really good.
Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you.